All right. Thank you very much to Ryan, Stanislav, and Rachel. For our next session, please welcome to the stage Craig Abrams, who's the president and CFO of Playtika, and Michael Metzger, who's a managing partner at Drakestar, for an exclusive fireside chat on what it takes to build, scale, and sustain success in the hyper-competitive mobile gaming industry.
Right next to each other? All right.
All right, do we have any mobile gamers here in the room? Hands up. Fantastic. So very happy to have Greg with me here talking about the both Playtika and the global gaming market. And maybe just to kick it off, Greg, can you tell me a little bit more about your background? And I think you've been shaping Playtika now for almost 15 years.
Yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride. I started at Caesars Entertainment, of all places, where we were looking at getting into the regulated internet poker market. And back when Zynga Poker was a big deal on Facebook, we owned the World Series of Poker and said we need to be in that business. Realized the only way to get in was to buy an operator. And we bought this little business in Israel, Playtika, 10 employees in Israel and another 30 in the Ukraine. And pretty quickly, it grew into a pretty big business. Most of our growth came through acquisitions. And we've done about 12 acquisitions over the last 15 years. Now we're the largest mobile independent public game company that's out there.
Fantastic. And obviously you have a very strong portfolio of mobile games. And maybe can you just walk us through some of the iconic franchises and why you think they were so successful or are so successful?
Sure. So when we were owned by Caesars, obviously our strategy was all about casino-themed games. And we started with slot-themed games. With the first game, we developed Slotomania. We acquired a company, Buffalo Studios, here in Santa Monica, which was known for Bingo Blitz. And we bought that in 2012. And 13 years later, it's the biggest bingo game in the world. As of last quarter, it's run rating over $600 million in revenue. And it's pretty impressive what they've done to just grow the bingo market in general. And in 2013, we bought a poker studio from Electronic Arts, which had the World Series of Poker. That's currently the #1 poker game in the world as well on mobile. And in 2016, when Playtika was sold, we made a decision to shift into casual games. We just saw a much bigger opportunity to go after categories that we weren't in and leverage all of our monetization and marketing and analytics know-how around live ops and bring it to casual games. And we started with the acquisition of a little company in Israel called Jelly Button. They had 2 games, Pirate Kings and Board Kings. And when we had success there, we got much more aggressive and bought Wooga, Super Treat, and Seriously, all within about an 18-month span. And today, June's Journey is the #1 hidden objects game. That came from Wooga. We have Solitaire Grand Harvest, which came from Super Treat. That's the #1 solitaire game in the market. So our view has been we want to be #1 or #2 in every category that we operate in. And we continue to grow. Our biggest acquisition was last year with Superplay, which had Dice Dreams and Domino Dreams. And we just launched Disney Solitaire, which is already, if you track it on any third-party service, it's quickly become the #2 solitaire game, right behind our own Solitaire Grand Harvest.
Fantastic, fantastic story. In a post-IDFA era, many mobile gaming studios have had challenges. Playtika specifically at some point said they really only want to focus on established games versus launching new games. Why was that?
So when IDFA happened, I think at first it was hard to assess just how challenging it would be to acquire customers on mobile. I think pretty quickly we saw that we had to get creative. We started doing a lot more offline campaigns, leveraging celebrities and bringing big brands into our games to attract customers. And I think that sort of bought us more time. But I think over time we realized that it was much more expensive and difficult to track the customers we're acquiring. And I think we had to pull back, like games that we had in our game pipeline that would have been successful probably 5 years earlier with those same metrics, just didn't have a good enough return on ad spend to be successful. And so we pulled back on the internal development. I think what we've seen over the last year or two is that there haven't been as many successful new games coming to market, and we've been more aggressive either through our acquisitions or internally developing new games to bring more to market. And Disney Solitaire, which just launched in April, is already off to a very fast start. And so I think we now have a lot more confidence in the ability to bring games to market and be successful in doing so. And I'm excited about another title that we have coming later this year back in the social casino segment, and another title that we have not announced the timeline on yet as well.
So fantastic. So we're going to see some more like organic game launches. That's great to hear. I always thought of Playtika as one of the very best in user acquisitions within the mobile ecosystem. What are effective strategies to acquire, monetize, and retain players?
I feel like we've tried it all over the years. We've tried everything from loyalty programs, variety of social features, a variety of different partners on the UA side. We acquired an agency and brought them in house. Our CMO Nir Korchuk came from that agency, and so we've bought a variety of AI teams, trying to leverage AI to better manage how we buy the traffic and measure performance. And I think we're very nimble in terms of, the top 10 UA providers one month isn't going to be the same providers the next month. You have to be very nimble in terms of moving sources quickly by geo, by title, and by return on ad spend. And so it is definitely a world where you can't just, pick a couple providers and sit back and spend money like you could kind of 10 years ago. It's one where you constantly need to measure and move money around very quickly.
So are you using a lot of AI on the UA side?
I wouldn't say a lot. I think we've developed some tools in-house that we leverage. We're constantly looking at partners. I think if you look at some of the biggest partners out there, they're all, whether it's AppLovin or Google or Facebook, they're all leveraging AI in their tool set to help provide game developers more tools. So I think over time, we'll continue to have better data to make better decisions. So I think it definitely is a positive tailwind for the industry.
Great. And in general, has it become more challenging to acquire really the good users, kind of retaining the ones, specifically the payers, became more important? Do you have any lessons learned to retain players over a long period of time?
I mean, if you look at our biggest game, we acquired it in 2012. And so obviously retaining customers for very long periods of time, I feel like is part of the special sauce. I think a lot of it, from our perspective, comes from product and live operations. How do you constantly innovate, bring new product features, keep your customers excited about coming to the game every single day? How do you build that community where they can compete against each other, they can play against each other, they can communicate with each other, they can share with each other? And all of those things are really critical to developing games that last the test of time. I think we also try to pick genres of games where we can have a big share of the segment. I think if you can have 50+% market share in a particular segment you operate in, you can really build a large community and make it really sticky. I think if you're in a segment where you're competing for 5 or 10% of market share and all of your players' friends aren't there and there isn't a large community around that game, it's hard to really build a moat around it and kind of last 10, 15 years. And so for us, it's been, I think the selection of each genre we operate in is a big part of the process. And then being very aggressive in developing a large moat of content that makes it hard for other startups to develop that type of content and compete on a daily basis.
You mentioned Disney Solitaire as one of the super successful recent launches from Superplay. What are your thoughts on third-party IP for games in general? That's something Playtika has not done a lot historically, right?
Historically, we were very focused on wanting to own our own IP. I think we thought that if you had to think about value creation, owning your own IP was really important. I think we were deathly afraid of every 5 years having to negotiate with an IP holder that basically would see a successful game and use it as leverage to extract more economics. But I think in this environment, post-IDFA, where it's really challenging to break through, IP is really important. And I think historically it was also, the only way to leverage IP was really just in the branding of the game. I think now you're seeing a lot of collaborations with IP holders where they can bring their IP into the game. And it can be there for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and then move on to different IP. And it really allows you to leverage bringing, fans of different markets into the game. Something as basic in Solitaire Grand Harvest, we had, the Smurfs and Snoopy and, a lot of nostalgic brands that we can bring in to kind of re-energize the game without necessarily branding it as, Smurf Solitaire, which probably wouldn't have worked. But then with something like Disney, you have something that, they have a treasure chest of IP with over, 80 different unique characters that we can bring into the game and leverage to, complete collections or scenes within the game. And, it's really working. And so I think, being creative with IP holders that have, rich portfolios of IP that you can leverage in the game and really think about, how do you build a 5-year roadmap around the game, leveraging their IP, it can be really powerful.
Great, and I mean, just looking locally here, Scopely with Monopoly Go, also third-party IP game, obviously a massive, massive success. So definitely a good strategy to maybe mix the both, own IP and some titles with third-party IP. A few weeks ago, Judge Gonzalez Rogers ruled that Apple has to allow links to third-party payment providers within the mobile apps. Playtika has been like a pioneer in the space and the direct-to-consumer. I think like over 25% of the current revenue is already not going through the traditional App Store channels. What do you think that does to the global, or to US specifically, mobile gaming ecosystem?
I think it's a huge positive for the mobile development community. I mean, the idea that you can distribute your games for 3 to 4% of revenue instead of 30% of revenue is a pretty tremendous difference, especially in a world where user acquisition's been so expensive. So I think your ability to kind of develop new games and have a business model that can much more easily scale is something that's really attractive. I think we'll have to see what happens next. I mean, the developer rules have changed, and you can see that. I have not seen many, if you look at the top 20 games, I have not seen one yet that has a live link out yet. So I think people have talked about the fact that they've submitted. I have not seen many get approved or live. But I think once you start to see that, and there's, I think everyone's a little nervous about, there's been many starts and stops to this, whether or not this time it's for real and final. But I think based on the ruling and everything that we read, we're pretty excited about it.
So how quickly do you think will users adopt it, let's say by year end? And do you see any frictions?
So we built our business on D2C, obviously, well before any change in sort of the rules. We have people that play on the web, on mobile web, people that play on a proprietary Android store that we have, and we'll market people directly off platform. And so I think, we've built that business over the last 5 or 6 years. And as you said, we're kind of, targeting 30%, and we're just south of that today. Of our revenue coming from direct to consumer, but it took a long time because obviously it's not something where you can do easily without friction. And I think here, if you're able to link out directly with a single click and then click a second box, and then you end up in a situation where the consumer has full choice of payment platform, I think you'll be able to see much higher conversion. And I think it's just a question of when people can roll it out and how quickly. But I think it's, if we were able to get there with a lot of friction and get to 25%, I feel like people without friction can get even better penetration.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like with a lot of users using Apple Pay, it seems funny enough, you click on the button, third-party payment provider, Apple Pay pops up, you double-click, you pay. It should be very, very easy for people to just do that if they get a better deal. And I mean, for gaming studios, a 20% improvement in bottom line is going to be massive and hopefully very, very helpful for the whole mobile gaming industry. So let's see how this all going to work out this year. For any of the mobile game studio founders here in the room that would like to scale up a game, they're still earlier stage, what advice would you give them? And should they focus on any specific KPIs or any advice, really?
Well, I think if you're an early stage founder, post Apple's rule changes, it definitely is going to be, I think, a bit easier to scale. So I think that's really exciting. I think for us, the metric we look at early stage is always retention, whether it's day 1, day 3, day 7, day 14, day 30, and just tracking that relentlessly. Obviously, the game has to be fun, engaging, exciting, and I think innovative at this point. I think there was a long time where you could pick a genre that was pretty successful and throw a new metagame on top of it and be pretty and have success. I think these days most categories are so crowded that if you're not breaking through with something that's totally different, it's hard to have a mechanic that can work. Obviously, we took a brand in a category that was pretty established, did a little bit of innovation, and Disney Solitaire is off to a big success. So I think it's possible with the right brands and the right changes in graphics and look and feel, and freshening up a space that is ripe for disruption. Some of these categories now are 10 or 15 years old and customers are ready for a switch, and there's that opportunity where you don't have to be so innovative, but you just need to bring a better product to market, and that better product will win. So it definitely is an interesting time in the space. I think mobile has had its ups and downs, but I think it's back on an upward trend in terms of all of the tailwinds that are happening, both on the payment side as well as the fact that there's been, I think, less capital early stage put in over the last few years, and so you're seeing fewer new titles for consumers. So I think if there are the newer titles that do have good backing, have a better chance of breaking through.
Great. As you mentioned in the intro, Playtika probably has been the most active acquirer in mobile gaming, which, for all of your founder CEOs out there, they probably should get to know Playtika better. What are some of the common themes of the successful acquisitions, and how did Playtika's culture and experience help further scaling those studios?
I think it's because we didn't really start off with a traditional game mentality. We weren't a product-first game company. We knew we understood marketing and monetization and analytics, and we needed to find founders that had great products that needed help scaling their business. And we tried to develop new games and realized we're just not good at it. And the way we were going to get better at it was to find these founders that had great products. And so what we look for is entrepreneurs that are really motivated at building products, that don't want to spend their life building live ops tools and building out corporate infrastructure, and don't want to have to worry about raising their next round. And if we can give them capital, flexibility, ability to help them market and grow quickly, and they can focus on what they love with product and scaling, it's a win-win combination. And so I think in the early days, that was sort of the initial strategy. I think now that we've diversified into so many different categories, it's finding more fulsome platforms that not only bring just one product that we can bring to market, it's a pipeline of products for the future. And so what was so attractive, we bought Superplay last year, was that they had 2 successful top 100 games, but they also had 2 games in the pipeline that we felt pretty confident in. And the idea that you can have a growth engine that's organically based and not always dependent on acquiring studios was important to us. And so I think Wooga had that DNA within Playtika, but there weren't a lot of other studios that really had that new game chops and sort of product expertise in doing that. So that's really where we're focused now, is finding great entrepreneurs.
And even after the, fairly large Superplay deal, I believe you still earmarked around 400 million for future acquisitions. What what are you looking for? What would be ideal targets, either by region, size, genre, or any preference?
Sure. So we're looking at bolt-on style acquisitions now, probably more similar to the in-play and Yuta acquisitions that we did just 2 years ago, kind of in the $100 to $150 million range, and studios that have success, starting to scale, working towards that path to profitability, and again, allowing us to bring our marketing know-how and capital to support them in their growth journey. So I think there's a variety of new business models that are interesting, kind of going outside traditional in-app purchases that we're looking at. The idea of going beyond the U.S. market, where most of our business is focused, and just looking for growth. To be honest, in this environment, there's just not a lot of companies that are growing consistently, and so growth is what's most attractive at the moment.
Okay, it's interesting. So companies don't necessarily need to be profitable, but showing high growth and future profitability, that's most important.
I think close to the inflection point. It's hard. I think in the games business, it's hard to fund that initial investment curve around a studio that doesn't have a proven track record of success. Obviously, if there's a successful franchise that you can invest behind, they're going to be much closer to break even. But that initial round of pure investment, both marketing and operations, is sort of tougher for us. And so it was actually great last year when we found Superplay, because they had made a huge investment in Dice and Domino Dreams, and we're investing behind the launch of Disney. And this was going to be more towards the inflection year, and that was a perfect year for us to make the acquisition. I think it was a much tougher transaction for us if you looked at it at the start of 2024.
And regionally, does it matter where the company is?
Regionally, we're open. I think most of the businesses we've looked at have been in Europe and around Europe. It just seems to be where most of the mobile game founders have been based that we've looked at, but we're open to anywhere.
So AI is reshaping the gaming industry in general. Where is Playtika using AI internally?
Sure. So we're like in our second iteration, I feel like, of AI for us. We started probably 5 or 6 years ago acquiring AI studios to really try and help solve the company's most difficult problems. So whether it was, how do you predict when a user is going to churn? How do you acquire customers more effectively and analyze the data from UA channel by channel? How do you do customer service more effectively? And then I think as much as we were investing in AI, third-party companies were investing much more in AI. And so now I think the products that are out in the marketplace that we can license from a software perspective are just much more advanced than what we have in-house. And so I think there's opportunities to be much more efficient in how we create content. I think on customer support and how we communicate with customers, there's a lot of tools there as well. And again, I think the biggest value opportunity is really on churn protection and how you can influence and affect a customer to convince them to want to stick around and enjoy either other games you have or unlock new parts of the game for them to keep them engaged prior to them churning.
So retention, that's great. How do you say AI will reshape the gaming industry?
Listen, I think there's probably much more upside as you go beyond mobile, as you look at these platforms where it's much more expensive to develop a game, especially on console, but PC as well. If you just look at the development budgets to bring a AAA console title to market, that's where probably the biggest opportunity is for AI. I think within mobile games, how can you, I think, analyze data more quickly, bring content to the consumer more quickly, customize content, have more realistic interactions as you communicate with customers. I think all of those things are really powerful. But I don't think we've seen the kind of the game changer that's going to unlock a big leg of growth. I think it's much more focused on kind of a better experience to the consumer and a more efficient work environment in terms of tools our employees can have.
Do you see AI playing a significant role kind of in the creation of new games from concepts? I mean, there's certain genres that have been around for a while. If you look at Match 3 or others, merge games that the genre was created and it's very successful, but maybe there haven't been a lot of new genres recently, and AI might be helpful in coming up with new creative gameplays or potential genres. Do you see this happening?
I'm not sure about genre. It's definitely going to help with speed to market. I think we're going to get to market much more quickly with one of our next game launches, leveraging AI tools than we would on our own. Need fewer people, getting out more quickly, and I think having pretty robust art. So I think there's a variety of benefits that are going to come from AI. I just think there's still, at the end of the day, games businesses are people and IP, and it's the creativity and the people that make it so special. And while there's AI tools, I feel like that it can help facilitate that. At the end of the day, it's those creative minds that are going to continue to make these games so successful in the marketplace.
Where do you see most growth coming from in the years to come? Maybe from a regional perspective and then within gaming from a segment perspective?
I mean, it's hard to say. I think there's been, people talked for years about emerging markets, and we just never really saw the development on, the major platforms that we thought we would see. I still think that, for most Western developers, China, Korea, and Japan represent the biggest opportunities. They're just tougher markets to break into. We have not been successful in those markets until recently. Disney Solitaire moved up the charts pretty quickly in Japan, and so I think for us, seeing how a brand can penetrate a market plus localization plus a brand new product that's exciting and fun. So I think all of those things can contribute to kind of tapping into new markets, but it's tough.
And from a genre point of view, or not genre, from a gaming segments, I think, are you going to continue to stay laser focused on mobile? Are you looking at other segments too? And where do you see kind of growth opportunities from that perspective?
I think for us, we still see the casual mobile game market as the biggest market with the most opportunities for growth within it. I think when we look at some of the other genres, I think they're much tougher to operate in. I think we don't have the skill set in mid-core or hardcore to operate there. I think as you look at how do you create a franchise that's going to last 10, 15, 20 years, it comes down to having kind of, in our view, game mechanics that have existed for a long time in the offline world that you're bringing to the online world, where consumers really love playing those style games and want to play those games. And I feel like sometimes these game styles that are almost too innovative, they become novel for short periods of time and they go away. So I think we're kind of sticking more to the bread and butter of kind of core gameplay that people grew up playing with their families, sitting around the table with their family growing up. And there's a real admiration for those types of games. And when they get to play them in a digital world and compete against friends and family, it kind of brings back that nostalgia. And that's really where our sweet spot has been.
What are you most excited about the future of gaming?
I think when I look at, kids today and how young people interact on devices, they really are on tablets and phones at a much earlier age than they've ever been before. And they're interacting in ways that just current gamers didn't at that age. And so I do feel like mobile is the form factor of the future in terms of how these gamers are going to kind of interact with gaming. And I know mobile had its initial rise post iPhone, but I feel like this new generation and how they interact with gaming, it may look a little bit differently than it does today in terms of the genres and the style of gaming, but I definitely feel like it's going to be on a mobile device. And so I think we're trying to figure that out around how that gamer kind of ages into gameplay and what they think about and how they game. But I do think that is an exciting platform for the future.
Fantastic. With that, thank you very much for joining us and providing all those insights. Maybe let's give Greg a hand.